Happy Saturday, pinball fans. Nick's Pinball Chronicles channel. I got to share with you another issue with my game. Tell you, if you don't have a machine that's 30 something years old and you're not doing maintenance to it, there's something wrong. Anyways, I had last couple weeks I've been having a general illumination problem where a couple of strings of my GI lights on my playfield started to flicker or weren't coming on at all. So when I get home, I will break it down for you and show you how I fixed it. Stay tuned. So I did some research on PinWiki, which is a great website for information on WPC issues and information. It's a great website, pinwiki.com. So the general illumination. Okay. WPC, I'll read it off the website. WPC Power Driver Board provides 5 GI circuits under CPU brightness control. The WPC 95 Power Driver Board provides 3 GI circuits under CPU brightness control and 2 that are always powered, which is not my game. I have a WPC pre-95, so I have 5 general illumination circuits on my power driver board. They're on the lower left-hand corner of the board, which is this section right here. GI power is provided by the transformer in the form of 6.3 volts AC at driver board connector J115. Although there are 5 pairs of wires, they're all connected together at the transformer. One side of the AC GI circuit on the power driver board is fused by fuses F106 through F110, which are 5 amp slow blows. This side runs to the GI lamps and carries 6.3 to the back box playfield and coin door via power driver board connector J120, 121, and 119 respectively. J119 is a 3-pin header that is always connected to the coin door lamps. 120 and 121 are electrically and physically identical, keyed at pin 4, and therefore can be connected to either the female playfield GI connectors or the female backbox GIs without care. The other side of the GI AC feed is to ground. The GI power is controlled by a triac in the return line from the playfield. When these triacs are off, no current passes and the lamps are off. When the triac is on, the GI lamps are on. The triac is a slightly special part. It must be a 4-sector triac. That means that it can switch both positive and negative sides of the AC cycle with only a positive signal. Each triac is switched on and off by a 2N5401 transistor, which is controlled by U1, a 74 LS374 octal D type flip-flop chip with 3 state outputs, a fancy way of saying that the device is an 8-bit data buffer. U1 is clocked by the ASIC, which is on the MPU board, via the triac signal. If you have AC power present at 115 and no GI, it's possible that the triac signal is not getting through to the chip. A logic probe applied to pin 11 of that chip will prove that the signal is getting through. If the signal is not present, try, after turning power off, pressing on the ASIC chip to reseat the ribbon cable between the NPU and the power driver board. Use your logic probe to track the signal from pin 66 of the ASIC across the NPU to the NPU connector, across the ribbon cable, then across the power driver board to U1 pin 11. The CPU can dim the GI by switching on the GI for only parts of the AC waveform. To do this, the CPU uses zero crossing signal on the driver board keyed from the AC that feeds the 5-volt circuit, diodes D3 and D38, and the LM339 at U6, which is another chip. I'll demonstrate it in my game. It's very similar to that. So, let me show you. Take the glass off very carefully. I'll be very careful with that. Okay. So, I was having a problem with the lower quadrant of lights weren't going on. And according to PinWiki and my wire guide, again, here's the GI section right here. You got your 5 triacs for the 5 different color wires going to the playfield. So here is your AC input, which is what PinWiki was talking about. Your 6.5 volts AC coming in. The last pin there is your, the last pin on the bottom of J115 is the ground plane. So here's your 5 fuses that feed the 5 GIs. They're all colored brown, orange, yellow, and you have traces. You got a brown stripe, yellow stripe, and an orange stripe. So power comes through here, goes through the fuses, and goes into the playfield, comes back out of the playfield and into one of these 5 triacs that control the dimming. And I believe it's this chip right here, if I'm not mistaken, that control the dimming from the ASIC chip that feeds through this ribbon cable. And that's how the lights dim. So I wasn't getting the actual situation that PinWiki was calling out. I was getting a flickering, and sometimes I would lose the lights if a ball hits it or whatever. It was intermittent. So I took the board out with the game and I put it on my bench, and I noticed that a couple of fuse holders here were getting loose. They weren't holding the fuse that well. It wasn't really tight. So I wound up replacing 3 of these fuse holders here. This one, the top one, and the bottom 2 I changed. And I also, when I took the board out and I laid it on the bench with nothing connected to it, with no power, I put an ohm meter between the AC input to make sure that the continuity was getting from this connector to here. And when I had the meter on it, I'd put the board upright on my bench and I would flex the board a little bit and the continuity would go in and out. So I knew I had more than likely a cold solder joint somewhere in the GI section with the resistor banks, the transistors, the little triac transistors, or the fuse mounts or the header pins. So what I did was I took the board out and I reflowed solder on all the points for the AC inputs and outputs in the triacs. And so far so good. That fixed the problem. I don't have any flickering or dimming on any of my GI circuits now. But there's also a way you can test it in diagnostics. You could test your GI to see if it's dimming properly in the test menu. And I did that and everything was good. So reflowing the board in that GI section fixed my general illumination problem. So hope it helps anybody else who has that particular issue. But there's also an easy way of seeing All you got to do, there's only 5 GI circuits in the game, and between the 5, all your GI lamps are strung together. So if you look under the playfield to see what lamp is out on the top of your game, if you look underneath, you'll see the wire color. It's either going to be brown, yellow, orange, brown with a white stripe, yellow with a white stripe, or brown, yellow, and orange with a white stripe. Any of those wires. So you can check to see under the playfield which wire is not getting, which string of wires isn't getting power, and you can trace it right up to the board by just looking at the wire colors and the pins, and then taking the board out of the game and checking your solder pads to make sure nothing is cracked. You really have to look at it up close with a magnifier, because they're really, really tiny traces, and if you have one little break in any of the solder pads, you'll get an intermittent problem like I did. So again, it was a really easy fix. Thankfully, I had my Heiko desoldering tool, which helped tremendously on removing the fuse holders without because if you're not careful, you apply too much heat to those solder pads. When you're pulling the solder off, you could damage the pads, which is why I have a Heiko. So it worked out good. Anybody else with a WPC game that's had issues with the GIs, you just trace the wire colors up to the board and troubleshoot it from there. It's pretty simple. And like the PinWiki said, if you have it where you're not getting a signal, you can always use a logic probe and go off the ASIC chip, make sure that the signal is getting from the ASIC chip through the ribbon cable into the chip that controls the one of the 5 triacs for your GI and your dimming. So that's pretty much it. One of a million problems I have with this thing. Again, it's a 30-plus-year-old machine. I try to take care of it as best as I can, but problems come up. Thankfully, I know how to fix most of it. So that's it. Have a resty or enjoyable afternoon on a Saturday, and thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel, and have a great day. Thanks.